And you are live.
Okay, this is House Education, Wednesday, March 26th, 2025. The committee is in discussion mode about the strike all amendment to H 454. Just want to bring up one small topic on an area that we certainly funded up. We have a request, the School Boards Association, for our boundary subcommittee. We have a group of 5, 2 of whom are business managers, 3 of whom are former superintendents, all former, but former of all of that. We have a request from the School Board Association to either add or swap out one for a school board member. Does anybody? Yes. Emily.
I'll just, me too, but I'll just say for clarity, I'm the one who mentioned business managers originally. But I still feel pretty compelled to keep this group small as possible. And in my mind, when I mentioned business manager, I never really felt like it was necessary to have 2. So if we are going to contemplate doing it, I'd still like to consider 5 and then maybe reduce the number of business manager down to 1.
And is it a former school board member, not a current school board member? Because everyone else has had to be former, not current.
I think for consistency's sake. So we have a thought on the table of saying 1 business manager, 1 school board member.
3 superintendents.
What's that?
And how many
3,
superintendents?
4
Three.
superintendents.
I think it would, I like, if we're gonna do that, I'd say 2 superintendents, 2 business.
I might disagree just to get superintendents from various regions of the state.
Yeah. that's
too.
important.
There's only 2. I'm afraid my region will be shortchanged.
And mine.
But you could do that with the superintendent. You could get each of those 5 persons from different areas, right? So they're gonna bring the perspective of their areas to the table, just. so they're all
Yeah.
in different
Do
positions.
people want to make any change?
Oh, that's the first question, isn't it?
I'm not necessarily suggesting a change because I think we're making good progress, but I am asking, why is it that we're not including teachers?
Because this is about governance, line drawing,
Mhm.
that sort of thing. It's not about educational delivery.
You don't think that the redistricting is going to affect educational
I
delivery?
absolutely do,
Which is why.
but this is literally drawing lines. on the
Okay.
map. So we can keep it status quo, Beth?
I guess I'd like to know the reason that they want to swap it out. What is the impetus for the swap out?
Sue, I might ask you to
benefit.
just jump in.
She's
and-
right here.
Before I make
Provide
a
that?
decision, I just like it voiced.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Sue Siglowski, Executive Director for the Vermont School Boards Association. I've spoken with the committee about the importance of the school board's connection to the community and how that can impact the culture of the district. And so I think that's important to consider when you're looking at drawing these lines, is how well the school board is going to be able to connect with the people that are in whatever district is defined.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I realize in our debating of big things and small things, this is a one to sort of get word about. I'll just put out there, we would swap out a business manager for a former school board member with an experienced school board member. We then have to assign as to who appoints that person.
Whether it's the Senate or the House Speaker.
If nobody chimes in, then I have to make an executive decision here.
Perfectly fine with
My
me.
perspective.
What's that?
I have all my perspective.
Go ahead.
I think the superintendent voices and perspective because most important here, so I don't wanna reduce any of that whatsoever. I'd probably make it all 5 superintendents for me, but we're not, so if it's speaker is picking one superintendent, Senate committee is picking one superintendent, governor's picking one superintendent, then the other speaker and committees be former business manager in one place, and then the other one, former business manager or school board member, and it would be up to that appointing.
Finding that little path.
Mhm.
I
I
love
like
compromise.
I like that.
Let's do that. And we'll make it, why don't we make that
Everyone
one
good
the
with that?
speaker?
Speaker or
Or committee and committees, I don't know
speaker?
Yeah. Let's do that.
Are we
Look at that.
going to vote or agree or just do silence as agreement?
We'll take silence as agreement.
Take the win.
It's not
I'm
as
agreeing with.
non-opposition.
Huh?
I agree.
Okay, now, let's see here. So I'm kind of hesitating from putting the whole thing on in front of us to walk through, but maybe that's what we start to do. We're gonna do it at some point and then we can mull over lunch. So why don't we start a walkthrough of H454 as introduced? I would just say to the committee that we've discussed parts of this we have not discussed. They are on the table for discussion. They are not meant to say we are doing it this way. So there's going to be some questions on parts of it that people haven't seen. So I just want to say that this is all fodder for debate, not and nothing more. So let's pull up 454 as introduced. I'm sorry.
Not as introduced.
I don't think
As
that's
an-
4.1.
4.1.
Which one is
4.1,
it?
thank you.
4.1? So amended, amendment language draft 4.1.
This wrong there, isn't it?
Yeah, ours look different, so I guess we'll have to figure out which ones.
I'm assuming it's the.
Is it the one draft 4.1, 324, 2025?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's what I need to refresh.
You say 324? 326.
350.
324 is what I got.
I have 326, 2025.
Well,
Let me refresh.
15,000.
No, wait.
Here on
I'm not sure that is all as well.
Well, it's on the 26th, but the date on the actual document is,
Oh,
Okay.
24.
oh, I'm looking at the title.
right,
It says 326.
Draft 4.1, 324,
What if I say
25.
324?
Is that
that would be
Looking for
it.
the same
Correct.
now?
Okay, I got two
34?
head shakes from the two.
This is the one I'm-
Penny.
I think it's.
all right?
that's like-
So maybe let's not talk about the commission.
So we think,
And the school district boundary subcommittee. And maybe go to page 17.
so everything up to
17.
17.
Yeah,
is
because he's
all
skipping the
stuff we
commission stuff.
Talked about with the subcommittee and the commission.
I think you should put it up on your screen.
I just need to be let into the waiting or.
Oh,
Beth St. James Office of Legislative Counsel, we're gonna do a reality check here.
Thank you.
Does everyone have a strike all amendment to H 454 that has draft 4.1, the date of 3/24, my initials, and 3:50 PM up?
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
30 some odd pages. 34 pages.
34.
It should be 34 pages. Okay. If we are going to skip the section related to the Commission on the Future of Public Education and the School District Boundary Subcommittee, that would put us at page 17. This draft is organized, so many pop-ups from Zoom, none of them helpful. Okay. The draft is organized, with reader assistance headings for, I'm gonna throw to Rep Brady here. Do you want to orient the committee as to how it's organized, or do you want me to take an attempt?
I'll let you, I
Okay.
gave a preview yesterday that I was gonna sit and work through to try to kind of build a little bit of coherence to all these different pieces. And the story that we have to tell on the floor and that we have to tell in our communities and so, and why we're doing what we're doing. And so we went through sort of lots of bits and pieces that were out there so far together and tried to think about an order or a way that they might fit and what those sort of subheadings might be. I'd love if you could take it from there.
Okay, thank you. So, there's a placeholder in section 1 that we have, on page 1 that we have skipped past for intent and findings language, should you choose to put that in there. Section 2 is the Commission on the Future of Public Education. After that, there's 3 reader assistance headings, 4 if you include the effective dates. But the 3 reader assistance headings are scale, statewide cohesion, and state level governance. And then under each of those reader assistance headings, which are the 3 asterisks, word, 3 asterisks, the language that is centered on the page, are different topics. So it's the broad topic of scale, and then within that topic, there are subtopics, if you will. So usually when we're using reader assistance headings, it would be something like class size minimums, or to kind of orient you to smaller subtopics. These are larger topics. And then under each reader assistance heading, there is an intent section for that specific reader assistance heading. And so the first intent section is the, I'm on page 17, line 9, is the intent of the General Assembly to transform education in Vermont by leveraging attainable and research-based scale to increase equity of opportunity and promote efficiency and affordability. Do you want me to just keep going? Okay. The next piece, section 4.
Folks, since I'm looking at my screen, kind of following along, if you have a question or a comment, just jump in.
Section 4 is class size minimums. So this is the amendment to section 165, the Education Quality Standards Statute. So page 18 starts that amendment. And this is the language that you've been looking at, including the language that we worked through yesterday with the assistance of the Superintendent's Association in a non-formal way. Do you want to walk through any of this specifically or just move on?
Any specific changes for yesterday?
I
think of as the.
So I would draw your attention to line 17 on page 18.
Mhm.
This is where we made the changes around the exclusions from the minimum class sizes.
Mhm.
Based on some feedback and some suggestions from the Superintendent's Association that you saw us working through in live time, in real time. So career and technical education, flexible pathways, terminal courses, advanced placement courses, courses that require specialized equipment and driver's ed would be excluded from class size minimum, and then also excluded are small group services for the purpose of providing special education, supplemental or targeted academic intervention, or English learner instruction. And then there was an additional section added, subdivision added here regarding occupancy limits and fire codes. So basically follow existing law.
We had talked a little bit about like a 2-year average.
Yes, so you've talked about a lot of things.
We have talked about a lot of things.
Correct. That the average comes in, and this is policy as to how you do this, but the way this is drafted now is that the state board is looking at class size minimum standards over the course of 2 consecutive school years.
Yep.
You could build it into and say class size minimums themselves are the average over 2 consecutive years for et cetera. The difference is you're hoping that everyone's meeting the class size minimums every year and not over the course of 2 years, but the state board can take action if over the course of 2 years, someone's not meeting the class size minimum.
So,
Great, thank you.
Anything else you want to talk about here?
I just want to double check on one of our last conversations is around independent schools.
Not in this section.
Okay, okay, because I think I've gone down too far.
Yes. Thank you. And I am going to be a little bit of a taskmaster, based on the time,
Please.
which is, both deeply uncomfortable and super comfortable for me. So, if I am overstepping my bounds, please do not hesitate to put me in my place. So we're on page 20. This is all current law regarding, you technically don't need to keep any of this in the bill, but when you're referring to what the options are for failure to follow class size minimums, I think it's helpful. But you're not proposing any changes to that process. And then again, this is district quality. Oh, actually, there's a change there to update to the secretary, and then district quality standards. Again, I'm going to recommend that eventually when you vote this out, that we remove this to make the bill as concise as possible, because you're not making any changes to district quality standards, but I've included it here again, because it's part of what you've been talking about, so. Okay, so then we go to section 5. I am on page 22, line 9, failure to comply with education quality standards, state board action. This is the language that we workshopped quite a bit yesterday regarding what actions the state board is prohibited from taking if a school district is failing to comply with the school or the class size minimums. And so this language would say, notwithstanding applicable law, the state board is prohibited from ordering school district consolidation or school consolidation if a school fails to comply with class size minimum education quality standards, and the resulting consolidation would result in school construction costs in excess of the applicable district's capital reserve account until the General Assembly establishes new school district boundaries and takes further action regarding the consequences for failure to meet education quality standards. So we good there? Okay. The next section is asking the state board to update their rules. And there's another subsection in there that asks for a report. So I am on the very bottom of page 22, line 19, State Board of Education Rules Report. Subsection A is asking the state board to update their rules. Subdivision 1 is asking the state board to update the education quality standards to comply with the class size minimum standards. And then I think I need to make some additional amendments here that I can make over the lunch hour or whenever you're on the floor. But the subdivision 2 is requiring the state board to update the 2200 series to require approved independent schools that intend to accept public tuition to comply with class size minimum standards, and then to create a review process by the state board for failure to meet class size minimum requirements and corresponding actions the board may take. I think I need to weave in here the waiver process.
Oh, yeah,
I have not done that.
That was my question. Thank you.
And then subsection B is requiring the State Board of Education to report back to you all with proposed standards for schools to be deemed small by necessity. Anything else you want to talk about here?
Probably not at the moment.
The next section, section 7, I'm on the very bottom of page 23, line 18, is a piece of intent language related to school sizes. You've addressed class sizes. The next level, if we're going up, would be school size. And so there's intent language in here. It is the intent of the General Assembly to encourage the efficient use of public funds to modernize school infrastructure to deliver identified 21st century educational goals. And then subsection B, I'm on page 24. It is further the intent of the General Assembly that each public school operating grades 6 through 12 or some subset of those grades shall have a minimum average daily membership of at least 450 students, at least in part by providing a robust state aid for school construction program that is driven by standards for quality for public schools, geographic accessibility, statewide enrollment trends, and capacity and scale that support substantially equal educational opportunities for all Vermont students.
So, just for the committee's thought process, and this has been the hardest topic to sort of address in a concrete way, especially in the absence of school construction, to say, we have to have schools of a minimum of this size, but we're not going to give you any money to create them. So that's why, when we talk about scale, we talk about class size minimums. And a lot, we talk about that. We talk about districts, larger districts. We talk a lot about that. This has been a bit of a tougher nut to crack, although, except to say that the other two will have an impact on this. But if folks have thoughts on this, I mean, it is essentially intent, and it is essentially saying we would like to see larger schools, but understand the reality of we aren't providing any financial assistance to make that happen. Representative Brady?
This is hard. This is all hard. This is hard for a reason, and this is where I think the reality of like foundation formula numbers and sort of theory and ideals meets this, right? Like, Rob Hooper has tried to sort of create a map and put the high schools, existing middle and junior and high schools on here. And this isn't perfect, and there's some errors in it, but roughly half of our existing high schools are below that size. So that's just like, to me, that was just like really super grounding. Like swag, the ideals and where we're going, like, yep, keep moving, but also literally half of our schools are not in that window right now. So that's why this is really hard. And the ideal versus the reality is we're going to keep running into each other. So.
Well, if we take the example that we heard this morning in the White River Valley area, it was really considered kind of an Act 46 success what they did in Bethel and South Royalton. Where they made one the middle school and one the high school, but we're still talking schools that are half the size.
Under that size, yeah.
So, the 450 came from.
So, and the numbers in the governor proposal.
But I thought the governor's proposal was 9 through 12 was 600.
It was. I think
So
it
it
was
still didn't technically help the governor's proposal.
That was their middle school number, I think.
And I'm just saying here that this says operating grades 6 through 12, and any numbers I believe that was on the Hooper map that was 9 through 12. So we're actually increasing a lot of grade levels to be added into that 450 number.
Yes.
Or expanded.
Right. So are you saying, I think that this is designed to say a couple things. One is that ideal school size, the focus should be on middle school, regional high school level. Maybe the 450, we can have a conversation about that number because this is intent language. Was really just to blend the two together, but with a heavy dose of reality of where we actually stand. I'm not sure how much it matters to say 600. Since it's intent language, I'm not sure I would have a problem with any of that. You did.
I mean, I was just trying to get a handle on where that number came from and the grade levels.
Yeah.
And all that. It's kind of a.
I think it was a
It's
sort of
an arbitrary kind of.
Yeah, I think it was to reflect Picus Odin. Their smallest number was 450. And then sort of accept the reality that we're not there. People have thoughts about using a different number. Like I said, I'm not quite sure it's a substantive change, but I'm happy to talk about it. Yes.
I would just caution us on the map that
Oh, yeah.
Brady
I know,
brought,
this is-
only because in my area, 6 through 12 was included in there, not 9, 12. So,
Yeah, this is
so
not.
they were varied
I'm
all
not
over the
basing-
place.
I'm
Yeah,
not
this is
basing
not
anything
specific.
Yeah,
on
but
it,
you-
it's just reference.
Yeah,
That's why I-
Yeah, it got referenced. I just wanted to be clear, some of those were different scales.
Yeah.
I'll ask you first, but is there a desire to change that number?
The 450?
Yeah.
Not-
I'll move it.
I don't necessarily have a strong opinion on it right now. I was just trying to get a handle on where it was coming
Cool,
from.
appreciate that.
No, I mean, from the research, I think, I would love to be talking about an ideal where particularly high schools are bigger than that. Again, that's completely unscientific, but if it's 60% correct, that's a big dose of reality.
And this is, and it is, and it is not.
It was helpful. Like, it-
Exactly.
It was it is a helpful map to look at, but.
Sober.
So I guess I'll just say, no, I'm not interested in changing the number up, certainly not. And I will just say that this is going to be, as Rep. Brady pointed out, a very significant change in the rural, especially rural parts of the state. I can speak to it because it's going to significantly change my county, region. And, so I guess I want to understand what happens if the school doesn't need it, can't, you know.
This
so-
is strictly aspirational,
Okay,
It's intent language.
because it's
Just-
basically saying, hey, until legislature, you can like make something happen with school construction.
is it linked specifically to school?
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to make sure it was, because
So on page 24, we're gonna move to line 8, section 8, school board authority to close the school. Notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary, the school board of a school district shall have the sole authority to close the public school. The authority granted to a school board in subsection A of this section shall supersede any conflicting charter provision, municipal ordinance, municipal bylaw, or article of incorporation adopted or enacted prior to July 1, 2025. So this is giving school boards the sole authority to close a public school. Currently, who has the authority to close a public school varies from school district to school district. In some school districts, it may be the school board. In some school districts, it may require a vote of the entire school district. In some school districts, it may require the vote of the town in which the school is located, and then a larger vote, et cetera. So this is saying, we're gonna supersede all of that. You can do that because you are the General Assembly and you have that power. And give that power solely to the school boards themselves.
So, for many of us, this is a big deal. This is a pretty hard pill to swallow if you represent a number of small rural districts. And I just want to acknowledge that both of myself and others. And I would be looking for any comment or question on this.
I think the people in my communities would be very opposed to not being included in that decision. Even though, they've elected their school board members, I think it will not be received well.
I would just say for clarity that this does not, and I would ask this question, this does not, question mark, change what might exist in articles of agreement in terms of the process. Like some would say, you gotta have a 2/3 majority of the vote of the school board, and you have to have a number of meetings, in that community beforehand.
I don't believe that this language contemplates those details. It's just about the authority to close the school.
Okay.
And I'm not familiar enough with the variations of all of those processes to understand if they are tied to other parts of the process that would be superseded by this language.
Thank you. Leanne, and Emily?
I guess I just, I also am sort of thinking about the testimony we received this morning from the Friends of Public Education that seemed to be able to point to clear research that consolidating school districts doesn't save us any money. It just kind of keeps the bottom line level. And so like, why would we do something that is gonna have such a forever and maybe devastating impact on our communities if it's not to save money, which is the task that we were originally given, not to completely rethink the way that education is handled. And as a teacher, I totally understand why there are some more opportunities with consolidated schools, and I wish more people understood that. But
So-
also, this isn't gonna save us money, so I don't know, should we be doing more to keep schools from closing if it's not gonna save us money?
So, first of all, we could get into we could spend a lot of time, sort of battling research and reality and why things are the way they are. But I just want to point out, this only applies to current school boards in current districts. So, it's still a very hard process that is done locally. This is not, all articles of agreement go away in the creation of new districts. Anyway, this is really just talking about the current system, current governance, which remains local, decisions are made locally. And this is really just, it's about the town being able to stop the closure of a school. I would say that's even if there are no kids in that school. Or, it's, and this is when we talk about compromise and hard decisions and hard choices. For me, this is a hard choice, hard decision, and I see it as significant compromising of what I believe my people in my district want. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I'm
was
sorry,
gonna,
Emily, you were next.
Oh.
She can go ahead if it's related
Oh,
specifically to this.
it is.
I mean, mine is
Yeah.
separate.
Okay. I was just gonna say, I think, we've heard definitely a lot of perspectives on this issue, but I guess my read on this proposal is that it goes to some of those voices we heard in the field who are saying that as we wait for large scale transformation over a course of years, they want the ability to sort of drive some of this change locally. And there are some decisions that folks would like to be able to make sort of in that interim phase that, sometimes the articles of agreements are sort of a roadblock to the change that they would like to see on the ground in their districts now. So I feel like this is actually giving them a tool to do that in the shorter term.
Thank you. I think if we look back at testimony that we received from the Montpelier Roxbury School District, that they closed the Roxbury School. It was very hard, very difficult. It was done locally. But that by closing it, they saved $2 million, and those students they have a longer bus ride, they have more opportunity. They probably would not have been able to do that had there been a town vote involved. Okay, I'm sorry, Emily, yes.
Thanks. So I want to clarify what, I know this is related to articles of agreement, and I know articles of agreement are all over the place. Two things. One, the ability for a school board to close the school does exist today on an emergency basis. I know that because I have in my region a school that has been closed because they couldn't staff it. It's happened a couple of times at a couple of different schools because there wasn't staff for the building. So there does remain some closure. Where I guess the question I have is, does this supersede other parts? And you sort of got to this of the articles of agreement. So when the school board makes the decision to close the school, and part of the articles of agreement say you can't become non-operational and go to choice without the other communities that are part of what was your union school district agree to allow that. This has happened in my district on a school that closed. The choice of the community was to ask the other communities that had been part of the union school district before the merger of the modified union school district. This is complicated, but it's really important. And the other towns rejected it. So that school remained within, the school district remained within the merger. I don't want the articles of agreement to change that ability. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. I think that this language is very specific and it only gives the school board the authority. It only supersedes any language in a articles of agreement or a charter provision, because you do still have some incorporated school districts that require different, whether it's the electorate or part of the electorate and the school board, different players, different parties to have a vote in that choice. What happens after that choice, I would say this language does not contemplate.
Okay, because the reason I ask is because it could have a significant financial impact on other communities that are part of that merged district that one school is a part of. If that changed.
Wouldn't that be a discussion locally?
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. I don't want, it is today a discussion locally and the other towns weigh in. I don't want to take away the town's right to weigh in on that question. That's all. Just double checking because it is financially burdensome to lose a district.
You have the power to supersede municipal governing documents. Those documents vary so widely that I don't know that we, like, this language is very specific. I think you've hit on a point of what are the consequences and what's the process after that decision is made, and what do those governing documents require that process to be. This language would not, I would say, this language would not supersede anything other than who gets to make the decision. What happens after that decision is made, I believe this language would let the articles of agreement or the governing documents, the charter provisions, control on what that process looks like. That there may be a conflict there, right? There may be an impossibility or an impracticability where if someone is making the decision and then other parties have to make follow-up decisions, but they didn't agree with that decision beforehand, are you just going to have this back and forth and not actually be able to realize the decision to close the school in any way that helps because you've got other parties involved in the process after the decision is made that are opposed to that decision? This is very, as you said, this is very complicated, but I want to be clear that I believe this is only about the decision to close it. The process for after that would remain as any of these governing documents would require. But there could be real world practical implications of that.
Right? Yes.
With the town of Roxbury and their closings, you said it saved them $2 million and their students have more opportunities now. Do you think that today, I realize this is speculative, but do you think that today the town of Roxbury would be like, thank you, we're glad that that decision was taken off our hands because we would have made the wrong decision? Or do you think that they would say there's more to it than just the bottom dollar?
Wouldn't hazard a speculation. I think they probably have mixed opinions.
Mhm.
I think perhaps some parents might say, really appreciate the new opportunities my town is thriving, and others might say, we mourn the loss of, this community.
Right.
I
Well,
mean, and I do want to say, I'll tell you, Roxbury is a very unique district.
okay. The reason I'm asking that sort of is just like in thinking about like my role right now and helping to make this decision, like I feel like it's kind of a value judgment, even though as a teacher, like I said, I see all these opportunities for me to say that is more important, that supersedes the values a town has to decide as a town they want to keep going as long as they can.
Yes, I mean, this is a hard one. But if we are going to achieve scale, if we are going to look at educational outcomes, educational opportunities, this presents a potential roadblock in the ability of school boards to move in that direction. But it's not an easy one. Representative Brady.
I guess I'd echo, I think what Representative Brown said, and this feels uncomfortable for me. Now, it might not, at least in the super short term, apply in my own district, but I go to the sort of educational experts and those in the field who have talked about this, and we've heard from school boards. I don't actually remember if it was the session it might have been last year where, school boards have made pretty careful thoughtful plans trying to do some of this, and then they are unable to do that in the face of town votes. And I think it might have been again a testimony last year, which is totally unfair to you, Representative Reynolds, since you weren't here to hear that. But, hearing some of the educational leaders talking about this and frustrated with sort of, the what's best for adults versus what's best for kids in some communities, and kind of the like ugly dynamics sometimes, or challenging dynamics at play in those conversations. And I feel somewhat uncomfortable even sort of weighing in on this, because I understand the context I'm coming from is very different, but I do come back to the educational testimony from school boards, superintendents, and principals in some places that have felt really frustrated by the inability to do what they think is educationally best.
Yeah.
Because of but I'm also moved by the testimony today from, what we got, and the importance of democracy and community involvement. So it's absolutely hard.
Well, and I would just add, having been in this position, this still doesn't make it easy for a school board. They
Yeah.
already have other requirements within their articles of agreement, plus they have to do it. And that's not something that any school board takes lightly.
I'm even struggling though with the phrase, like, I don't disagree with anything you're saying.
I know.
I'm even struggling with the phrase though, what's best for kids versus what's best for adults, as like, that's not even as black and white as we're trying to say that it is. With,
None of this is black and white, absolutely.
No.
If it
yeah,
were, our job would be super easy.
I just want to make sure we're not in a position where like, you don't know what you're talking about because you're not an educational leader, like, you're.
Yep. I mean, a school board still has to make the case to its populace.
Yeah, I know.
Emily?
I think that's kind of the direction I wanted to just touch base on. This is, as Representative Harple is feeling, this is very hard for me. Because I also am living in a very rural area this will have a great impact. But at the same time, I recognize also that the school board of the school district shall have the sole authority to close a public school, but they also could choose not to. And I think it's really important to remember that the community still has a voice with that school board, still works closely with them. And while the sole authority in the end does reside there, I know as a school board member as well that there's a lot of deep commitment to the communities as a school board as well. So I just wanted to remind us of that. It's the only thing that I'm holding on to here with this, frankly. We don't have to do this.
I'm a little late to this party, but I'm wondering the timeline, because we don't want a school board closing a public school in a district where there isn't other public schools, right? Like the whole, we're not gonna have non-operating districts kind of thing. So where does this live in the life of that?
Well, it sort of lives in this
Kind of
in-between period of current status and future larger districts. So once future larger districts are chartered, all of this articles of agreement, that they no longer exist.
But we wouldn't want a school to close for next year if we actually need it open when the new districts, somebody's forward thinking, I hope.
So I think we have to have our school boards be forward thinking. If I think about what's going on in Ripton, that school has seen significant decline in enrollment to the point where they can't even meet their own class size minimums. And it may reach a point in a year where they need to close the school just for sort of operational reasons.
And are they close enough to someplace else so that
Yes. And
we don't end up with a non-operating district? That's all.
yes. Yeah, they're within a district. Yeah. Okay, yeah, and we'll wrap it up. That's your Representative Brady.
I think it's a good point, but I think it's why this is all kind of a package. And maybe some feel like oh, we're not making big change, we're not going fast enough, or to like, there's lots of consequential changes that add up here, and the ability for implementation of them at the local level and at the state level, I think is a large leap of faith we're all making. And so that's why, it's in the same bill that we're on a path to district consolidation done thoughtfully and still quite quickly. So I guess to me, it's why this is all kind of part of a package trying to acknowledge our current state and be as ambitious but realistic about transitions to some of our larger goals.
It's noon. A lot rattling around. We'll close there. So, we will have lunch. We are on the floor at 1. I think it is to do announcements, and then we go to a caucus of the whole to discuss the budget. I'll provide an update sort of as to our work. Emily Kornheiser will do the same. Then the floor will restart, but we will come back here and continue our work.